Breaking the Cycle of Poverty, featuring Jay Height, Executive Director of Shepherd Community Center in Indianapolis. My name is Tim Swearens, and I'm your host for these conversations that explore why poverty remains such a persistent problem in the United States. On this episode, Jay discusses how federal and state budget cuts may affect Shepherd's neighbors. Jay, let's start by talking about one of our favorite topics, food. About 40 million Americans rely on SNAP benefits, food stamps, to help feed themselves and their families. But the U.S. House recently passed legislation that would significantly cut federal funding of SNAP benefits. What would a potential reduction in benefits mean for Shepherd's neighbors?
Yeah, and so what that cut actually means is currently the way it's structured is the feds and the state each pay 50% on the staffing of that program. And then the benefit, the money that actually goes to families, the federal government has paid 100%. What the change is going is that the state would have 75% responsibility. The feds would have 25 in the implementation, the staffing, and the actual benefit. It would be 75% federal, 25% to the state. In talking to state leaders, and we've just gone through our budget process, this is going to cost about $365 million just for the state of Indiana. We don't have that in reserve. We don't have that just sitting around. Part of what they are trying to do is to enhance the enforcement of the rules and things to make sure there's not fraud. Is there fraud? I'm sure. Is there $365 million of fraud inside of Indiana? I don't think we have near that. We all can do better, but this is going to be an incredible hardship. It's also going to be an impact into the neighborhood when we've already dealt with food deserts, with the idea that grocery stores have closed. Much of our neighbors are going to go to CVS, to Walgreens, to Family Dollar, Dollar Tree to do their shopping. If this cut comes through, you'll see many of them closing because they have got so much of their income through the SNAP program.
So you will see businesses closing.
Yeah. So I think there's a double whammy that's going to be impacting folks, and we have to figure out a way to help those who really need that help. And there's a bigger issue here that we could spend hours talking about is this whole welfare cliff. Just heard of mother with multiple children, and she got a second job to help pay the bills, and she lost all her benefits because she's got this second job. And so now she doesn't have food stamps, so she's even worse. And there's lots of challenges, but these cuts are going to have an impact.
And what is that, in practical terms, what does that mean for our neighbors?
Hunger will become more of a reality for many folks. And it's a great opportunity for the church to embrace this idea that it's our responsibility to love your neighbor and to help in that. It's going to put more of a burden on places like Shepherd and our food programs.
There's also discussion of cuts on the healthcare side in terms of Medicaid. What would a reduction in Medicaid benefits, how would it affect our neighbors?
I think it shifts the cost from people going to the doctor to enhancing more and more people go into the emergency rooms, which then is much more of an expensive way. If you get your health care through the ER, that's very expensive. But if that's your only option, there won't be any health care. It'll all be sick care. And there's a big difference. And then those hospitals that will be hit with those huge bills in the ER have to pass that along. And so ultimately, we are all impacted by a continued increase. And the other one that is probably one of the ones that we're seeing quite clearly here at Shepherd is the reduction in CCDF vouchers. It's held.
Explain what those are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Child care vouchers
Hmm.
for those who are working and qualify. For those who are looking for work, you can get child care vouchers. They have been frozen for 2 years, which is really a reduction because there's no growth. And so this year there was no new money given. I understand that they have tough decisions to make. It just means there's lots of families on the waiting list, and about 65% of those at our child care center do get CCDF vouchers. We have some who work for us who get CCDF vouchers, and they're on waiting list. And so we don't see any end to that soon. As everyone tackles with paying their bills, I appreciate our state's commitment to having a balanced budget and to not be bad stewards. It just pushes this challenge down when you have problems with your Medicaid, you have challenges with food stamps. Now you're going to have problems with childcare, and many of our families want to provide for themselves. They just need some help in doing that. And the safety net, the welfare, was really created to be a trampoline to allow them to catapult themselves forward. With these cuts and with the way sometimes the programs are operated, it keeps them from being able to move forward.
I'm sure some of our listeners are saying, look at the federal deficit, look at the national debt. Something has to be done. When you hear those concerns, what do you say? How do you respond?
Um, well, I believe Jesus said, love your neighbor. And 62 years ago, I think the church stepped back and allowed government to own it when Lyndon Johnson declared the war on poverty. Well intentioned, but it was never given to government to be the sole supporter of neighbors. Jesus gave that to us individually. So it isn't a corporate call, it's an individual call for us to live it out and to love our neighbors. I can remember growing up in Dayton, Ohio, and Miss Trimble lived next door. And she in a 4 square apartment building, and she lived in the bottom left. And whenever Miss Trimble was sick, my mom would take her to the doctor or whatever, but many times mom would fix extra food, and it was my job as a 5 or 6 year old to run those foods, that meal, over to Miss Trimble's house, because that's what you did. There was not a dependence on government to make sure Miss Trimble, that's what neighbors did. I think we have to reclaim that. And so 62 years later, this is a chance for neighborhoods to re-neighbor the hood, as we're trying to do here, to love your neighbor and to get to know them and then find ways to help support those. If we can do that, I think we will go a long way in replacing some of this. I do believe that government has a place at the table, but so does the church, and I think the church needs to step up.
Are there specific ways that churches can step up?
Well, I think every church should have programs or ways that they're connecting to their own community, and supporting great organizations like Wheeler Mission, what we're doing here at Shepherd Community, folks that want to do food drives. But we know that hunger and poverty are everywhere. They're not just in the near east side of Indianapolis. And so it's why Jesus said, the widows, the orphans, the aliens from a foreign land, and the Levites, care for all of those. And we do that in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. And so it's where we live and work and worship, but it's also around us. And each of those gives a different definition. And so for us to define that and then to live that out and find ways that we can help, whether it's tutoring a kid, whether it's taking groceries to a neighbor.
Shepherd and our partners are helping hundreds, if not thousands, of people already with food, healthcare, housing, education. We could go down the list. How can our listeners support those efforts?
Yeah, I think today, as I came in for this recording, it's a Friday afternoon, and we have in our programs right now about 300 kids that are here in summer programs and in our childcare, and they're taking home food boxes of food, thanks to our great partnership with Gleaners, so that the kids have food to eat on for the weekend. supporting that. I just spoke at a church that they're the paper product church, and they collect, it's a small little church about an hour outside of Indianapolis, and they gather paper plates and cups and plasticware and napkins and all those. We have a church that's the peanut butter church. We have a church that's the cereal church. And so whether a church somebody wants to help organize their church to gather certain items we need, or they just say, I'm going to go at the grocery and I'm going to buy extra, or go online and purchase things and have it shipped here. You can do all of those things. One of the things that's very precious to our neighborhood and to our community, Kingsway Christian Church gathers laundry detergent. And that's a very practical thing that they can do to help our neighbors. Personal hygiene, feminine hygiene, shampoo, soap are all items that you can't use food stamps to purchase. So they're very precious. And maybe some church says, I want to just help that.
Somebody listening feels called to answer that, right? We want to be the shampoo church. How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, they could reach out to any one of us here, Colton, myself, and we would get that connection made and help that. But make sure folks understand, I want folks to be clear, we don't stop with the shampoo. We don't stop with the laundry detergent, with the baked beans or whatever. We use that as a way to create the connection, the relationship, and that it's in relationship we can truly impact our neighbors.
I know this is something you feel very passionately about because you see the need, right? You see the real faces of people who are going hungry or maybe not going to the doctor when they need to. Could you just speak to that?
Yeah, Jane and I, once a week, we do deliver food to some of our neighbors, and on their front porches, we have great conversation. I just this week talked to a gentleman who is having some health issues, and he said, well, I don't have insurance and I'm afraid to go. And I said, why are you afraid to go? And he said that they're going to find something. And we talked that through, but he's not listening to me right now, but he knows that we care and we could pray with him. I've seen when we've taken groceries, we took eggs one time and the lady wept because she can't afford them, and we were able to bring her eggs, and thankful to a great partnership with Hatch, another great organization. So I've seen where it makes a huge difference taking laundry detergent to someone who wouldn't have access to that otherwise. It is a reality. The statistics are great, and they can get worse with all of the challenges coming. And those statistics have names and faces. And that's who we're trying to connect with and to flesh out. And I understand government has some challenges. I think the church has a challenge, and that is to regain our mantle and to be the ones who love their neighbors.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. For 40 years, Shepherd Community has made a lasting difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of neighbors. The Shepherd team couldn't do that work without the support of donors, partners, and volunteers. To learn more about how you can help, please visit shepherdcommunity.org. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Tim.